when you begin to actually understand from a good trauma sensory motor or somatic expert, those are all different types of therapists usually, or like me, consultants, mentors, those who have educational hours and certificates, mindfulness, holistic life coaching. The hours are to support people on their personal development. And inner well-being is all about the restorative embodied self and the integration of the mind. So that would equate people who are out of their adaptive child emotional responses. So adaptive children, there's a way that they work. And I would say some people would identify it as ego, but the ego self, there's like a big debate amongst our lovely human beings in the educational system, and just overall, we all have opinions. Apparently, the joke is they all smell because they all come from the same place. And on that note, with my lovely masters in international relations and diplomacy, I can tell you that when I was going to college, I actually thought that all people love to be smart, stable, mature, adaptive, rational, and teachable. Now, I'm also 5D mystic, so you better imagine how unsmart I seem to be when I'm talking about channeled guidance and ascension energies. And then when I bring together the physics components that I'm learning thanks to different theoretical physicists, but also the neuroscience components that I get to learn from the neuroscience. And so in this entire world of education, the actual smart people are the ones who are open-minded into the fact that we don't know everything. And thanks to technology, we're learning a lot more about ourselves. The past decade, I'm thinking, or even a little bit longer, because there's one video I watched that was informing me of how many years they had been studying the mind, or the brain, the physical skull, with the embodied. Obviously, your brain is not only a brain, it's embodied. So the body part counts and the nervous system counts. But, most people that think they know human beings, they think evil exists. So they're still talking about that. And they don't actually know the embodied brain or the embodied anything for that matter, or the adaptive child. But there are some educators that also, when they approach topics, they still have this adaptive child's way. And that would be where they're trying to prove they're right versus just allowing genuine information to be shared. This is why I love food for thought, because I am nobody except for a human being who cares. I am knowledgeable, but I don't need to prove it, because the educators that are doing the research, they're going to be able to prove it enough for some people to actually be smart enough to hear them. Others, they're not really looking to get informed. They're looking to be right. So again, the adaptive child isn't actually looking for information. It's for confirmation bias, following most likely what is cognitive dissonance, what is a reactivity that they're not even being aware of. The biochemistry of your body actually affects you, whether you're hypersensitive to it or not. Obviously, hypersensitive definitely makes us more aware than not of every little bit of change that happens. And sometimes that leads us to grow more and more and more of our lovely window of welcome. And in fact, that's where we also learn how to hold more energy, so more charge. And this is beautiful. For any of my Enlightenment Soul Age group mystics, you know what I'm talking about, because this is that year. Every one of us has a journey, and some of us are getting to master the physical plane. And that's really fun. On that note, there are those who go through what is trauma. So it's not the events as much as it is too much, too soon, too quick. And the body doesn't have enough time to process. This is another one of those areas that some people don't believe in. So epigenetics, I have to still look into it a lot more. But our charge from trauma can be released through urine, through, what was it? The other one, tears. Sadness is a primary emotion, and sweat. And there is a name that they gave the charge, but I forget it, because I also went to look it up with a friend, family friend, and obviously in the Wikipedia it doesn't describe how it's part of a trauma response and it gets released because you need to get the books of the different epigenetic individuals who are applying what they're finding to the circumstance of human beings. And therefore, you grab data, you're not going to find it in the context of here's how it works. That's where we have different opinions and different educators teaching different things. Some teach that emotions don't mean anything and that they just rule you. Others, instead, they teach a lot. And it's very interesting. So here's the fun fact that I was trying to get to before I went on and on. And that would be that some neuroscience educators actually have found the seat of the self, or they are looking at the seat of the self being, and I was looking for my notes because I know I wrote it down, but I just don't remember where. But it's in our right temporal lobe, executive functioning. It's an executive functioning area, so forgive me, but I don't have my notes and I don't know where I put them. So anyways, this area, and it was Patrick McNamara who I saw talking about it in one of the videos from Big Think or The Well. It's an inhibitory area, but it controls all of our functions. And so both the primal automatic ones, which are where our flight, fight, freeze, that autonomous nervous system safety behavior response, if you're not engaged in your ventral vagal nerve, the social engagement, so I'm safe, I can talk and be myself, and there's a very specific way this happens. It's when you're equanimous, really, and able to consistently maintain a level of equanimity as you engage in an exchange of complete different opposing views. Like opposing views. So someone who would detest every single one of the opinions you have. I've done it, not to the extreme, because I haven't met a person that open-minded from the complete opposite. But I do have loved ones who we have opposing views, and the owners of their own self, I get to have really great chats with them. They're also smart, which makes it even that much more enticing and beautiful, because, when you use stereotypes, cliches, overgeneralizations, and just a movie to make your case, kind of gets kind of boring, kind of fast. At least if someone intellectually presents you material, then you get to go and read up on that material, and you get to widen your perspective and your knowledge, which, yes, through the ears, because even though we read through the eyes, the ears will take in. So long story short, when the same body of educators and researchers and professionals don't agree on something, there's a lot of different opinions. So you don't have to pick a side. And that's what an integrated mind knows, because we use left and right, and we're okay with right in the infinite possibility. We're not afraid of dealing with the unknown, uncertainty, and unwanted from within us, and going with our own flow, which means we are not going to pick one group or another, because the reality is, why would I? Both have valid points. Both are still doing research, and one wants to say no, the other says no, it does work, and obviously if it's going to be a truth at some point or another, it'll get proven, and if not, it will get disproven, and if gets proven and then disproven, that's because that's exactly what happens as we gain more knowledge. So somewhere along the lines, people are finally starting to get married to this Shiva, this unknown, in a educator's way. And those are my favorite ones, because they're functional adults. They're flexible, adaptive, coherent, energized, and stable, because they have integration of the mind. So their left and right brain hemisphere work together, all hands on deck. There's a down-regulated default mode network. Thank you, Daniel Siegel, for explaining all of this to me. And I'm still finishing up my lovely interpersonal neurobiology class. So essentially, there is a self. I know my own self. And I love when I find people who want to try and preface what their opinion is as the truth. And again, I'm probably guilty of being inclined to share just how much the infinite higher human consciousness potential experience is available to all, and how everyone can, if they want, either move out of human suffering or not have lived it, because those of us who have a relationship with our right brain mode and our left brain mode, we've always felt the chemistry in our body. And we've always then, my body feels yucky, I'm gonna tend to my body. Wait, drinking too much is really bad. This stuff over here, this really doesn't feel good. So some of us, we actually completely stayed within inner well-being in our body and our minds. And this is just one example. Oh, also differentiated selves, meaning I have my own thoughts and feelings, and if I don't match my mother's or my father's or my sister's or my brother's, I'm not going to feel defective. Imperfect, of course, especially when I'm being perfect. And those little discussions, I'm sorry, Miss Perfect. It's like, well, no, I never said that I'm perfect, but hey, I'll take the compliment if you want. So when you're actually in a state of imperfection and flaws with unconditional love, you don't have an ego that gets bruised. You don't have adaptive children that try to prove themselves right to others or wrong. So you don't get into self-aggrandizement or self-limitation. There isn't an inner critic or an outer critic or denying through drugs, sex, alcohol, food, and then withdrawing and doing it all over again, which is a shame cycle, which is of a heartbreak, gut wrench, torn apart, very serious, defective unworthiness cycle that some have with dysregulated and modulated embodied selves experience. And that's sad because they need to get the environment around them to be safe first before maybe they get out of numbness and a lot more from their own body if they have their well-being in mind, which means, wow, you know what? All these situations, they're not leading me to a great space. Now, for those environments where they don't have these options, the ones of us who are compassionate beyond a reason, and so we don't label any group of our own countries or the world as pieces of whatever that some would say you don't deserve to live. No. See, the adults know all people are here to live. Now, that we need to reestablish certain balances because of a lot of things. We already know this does not mean let's eliminate people. So some people are like, oh, those people, they don't have opportunities. Other people are like, oh, everyone has opportunity. So the smart people actually say, okay, you both have points. Now let's work together and figure it out versus yelling at each other. That's what adults know how to do because, again, we don't get reactive since our 2-year-old isn't actually ruling the world because our right brain mode and whatever comes up from that brainstem is handled by us. Now, some people, their emotional triggers are not easily handleable. And I just made up that word. So the people that can help those people to work with their triggers are the functional adults, which is by sharing compassion beyond reason. Because if you're insulting me while I'm having a different opinion, but I'm so confident that my body isn't going to be reactive, I'm going to be like, how can I make the situation better so that I disengage from what would be very unpleasant? So again, when we're in certain environments, of course, we will notice that there's less availability to that opportunity because of the environment. That does not mean we must behave in a way that instigates more upset. Those of us who can be grown-ups can always create harmony and bring ease because we stay at ease within our nervous system. As a species, we learned to self-regulating, to self-regulate by co-regulating. So when we're around each other, we are co-regulating. It's not about energy vampires. It's actually about nervous systems. Oh, not all of the mental health educators believe in mirror neurons, may I add. So besides not all mental health, and I call mental health out because neuroscience, neuropsychology, somatics, trauma, they all work to help people to live their most optimal life for those who care. For those who don't, they talk about emotions as stupid and they don't actually venture off into the brain or the mind or implicit memory or how to work with the body and the brain. And so, you got anyone who doesn't acknowledge energy and motion because they don't think of emotions as this. They think of it only in the words of happy, sad. Those are feelings, and sad is a primary, emotion, feelings. Some use it interchangeably again. Point is, to call an emotion stupid means you're not going to explore it, which means you're going to allow it to keep staying in its raw nature, which means you're not going to grow up. The part about mirror neurons being there or not being there is a debate that they're going to continue. The ones who believe in it share, educate, teach. The ones who don't, they stay a little bit back because they recognize it's not been disproven. The smart ones. the ones who want to act like they know everything, or basically just forget that there's also people who have proven that they exist, they make statements. So back to what I was getting to, this neuroscience person wrote about their preference of Eastern philosophy versus Western philosophy and how the self doesn't exist. And the way they go about this, though, is very fascinating because, see, an adaptive child, again, will always try to prove they're right. Then they will control the situation. So anybody who's controlling any conversation, they're going to be listing to you every single one of those items of why they will. That's how you make a case, by the way. I did, again, international relations and diplomacy and my bachelor's in political science. So I know a thing or two about rhetoric and negotiation, and they all basically point to the same thing. So we can make lists of any items we want and try to make a case. It's going to be qualitative with some quantitative, but here's where science is a methodology, not proof. So as long as they still have other people trying to disprove something, we're going to have two sides to a story. Some people say you can't stay too open-minded. Others say can't be closed-minded when there's all these different subject matter experts talking about all these different things, and they all have valid points, and none of them actually are not smart. They're all very smart, to say the least, not to mention the investment of investors. And let's not go down that path of, obviously we know that companies are going to promote something versus others, but that's the same thing. We got them all over the place. There's no one item that wants to stay on board, except for those of us who do. The ones of us who say humanity is awesome, we're evolving, we expand consciousness, and look at this. We're learning how to accept that we don't know everything, and then to talk about it like grown-ups. Oh, it makes the hearts of those of us who are grown-ups very happy, because it's so boring to hear the adaptive children. So this adaptive child is really great. They were very soft about it, but it was hilarious the way that they were bringing out this whole, the self. Because the title of the article, that one, online marketer, clickbait, click whatever, CTAs. Yeah, I do not. I have created a content marketing course for how to not be a sales pitch. So anytime I see something like this, I'm like, really? Then we want to talk about this information. I wonder why you're making sentences that say bullshit, that make a statement, and then people are just going to read that because, by the way, people don't always click on the articles. So Eastern philosophy says there is no self, period. Science agrees. Okay, so immediately it's not true because, no, not all science agrees with that. And then the sentence that they like to use, and this is of a person, I'll go get his name in a minute. Why are you unhappy? Because 99.9% of everything you think and of everything you do is for yourself, and there isn't one. I would say Maria is here right now, and I would say there's a lot of other people that are here. So that the Eastern philosophy talks about the self not being here. They're in oneness consciousness one. When you're living life, you're not living in oneness consciousness, because right now I'm having an exchange. So the idea that there is no self leads people to spiritual bypassing, narcissism. We all have the narcissistic bubble, but the narcissistic people that I'm talking about, it's not the diagnosed ones. It's the ones who have self-aggrandizement. I see a bunch of educators in it, by the way. And for the 4D mystics, they're all in spiritual bypassing. So here's where none of us are anointed. We're part of the same fabric. It's called consciousness, and any 5D mystic will know that, and that's why we're not anointed. We're just tapping into what is our human nature, by the way. And an integrated mind, FYI, becomes a conduit because all hands are on deck and the brain's working as oneness. It's a really amazing thing also to have a restorative embodied self, by the way. So this is Taoist philosopher Wei Wu Wei. So he's the one who writes this. I don't know when. But for the author of this article, the idea is captured brilliantly. Okay, so this article, I won't have time to read it here. I'll be reading it a little bit on our next episode. It'll be tomorrow or the future. And all I'm going to say is it made me laugh because he talks about the left and right. And he talks about how the left brain is the part of our brain that makes us worry and think and a lot of other things. And see, the left brain is the linguistic component, and it's the same part of the brain that wants to have proof for everything. The adaptive child rules with the left brain. In fact, this is exactly the point. They have no access to their right brain mode as they get into just proving their point, because the right implicit memory comes up. All the unresolved trauma or attachment wounds, everything that you're not conscious of, it comes up and it then dominates you. And the left is going to find a way to, of course, support the right. It's one brain. And so this person, when he is, I think it's a he, yeah, and he's just writing about how the West believes in a self and the East doesn't. And then he talks about these studies that divided the brain into two. Oh, and he also makes a statement, there is no self-center in the brain. Well, as I told you in the video that I recently watched from Patrick McNamara, who's a neuroscientist who does a lot of studies, he says, no, the biological center of the self is in this right temporal area. So this was funny because I'm like, this person doesn't know about this, and yet he writes this article about there being no self-center. So the article is written from what year? Let's see, does it have a year? Excuse me. Yes, it's June 9th. It's a new publication. So there you go. And the same foundation because it is with a foundation, they also are supporting Patrick McNamara. So this foundation has all of these different educators. They're all great because they're all sharing information. Let me remind you, none of these are proof for it to be true or not. That's my point. And my point is actually this individual, though, the way they write about this is as if they're stating facts, which they don't have to. They could easily present their perspective with their data like an adult who includes other colleagues of mine. They believe otherwise, and this is a great debate for us to continue to discuss. Not there is no self-center in the brain, and then to try and make a case where there is no self. We will continue the conversation, as I said, with our enlightenment time. So you could look for that one tomorrow. But in the meantime, if you're actually smart, you maintain open-mindedness, since you would know that no one subject matter group or expert for that matter has a truth, because they're still proving a lot of things. And the reality is, why would you try to prove that there is a self or no self? Exactly. We are people who can empower ourselves by educating ourselves, opening our minds, opening our hearts. That's the most fun, to be curious, genuinely speaking, about each other's opinions versus have what are adaptive children debates, which really aren't even debates. It's just kids taken over by their emotions and having their group leader tell them it's okay to behave that way, because those grown-ups or group leaders are actually adaptive children that have shown here's what it's like to be a grown-up, and those kids look up to those people because it feels like it's strong when it's not. Strength is with the openness of a heart, with softness, and with really ears that hear, eyes that see, and that we know we don't know everything. Because, hello, did anyone ever think we would have all the answers? Because I don't know where that idea came from. Infinite higher human consciousness potential. It's an experience that is beautiful for my lovely 5D mystics and enlightenment soul age group people, or those who just choose to be an integrated mind and a restorative embodied self, a functional adult, forgiving, nuanced, who learns new skills and loves waking up every day. Have a wonderful Monday and week.